David Moyes has been saying an awful lot recently. He is a man that usually keeps his cards quite close to his chest, yet in the last few days we've seen a really candid and frank extended interview with his friend Graham Hunter. And just yesterday we saw again an extended and quite frank a press conference. It was the press conference ahead of the Nottingham Forest game, but normally when he's asked questions, he dodges and weaves and evades making an answer, evades the question. He was quite forthright in this when asked about the signing of Nunes, report from, I don't know him to be fair, but from one of the Portuguese clubs. He said, yes, we bid for him. But the player doesn't want to come to us. Well, that's really, really interesting language from David Moyes. Doesn't normally speak like that. He was quite effusive about Maxwell Cornet. Certainly put to rest, I feel, some of the questions that we might have had as to what position Cornet is going to play him and whether Moyes sees him as an attacker or a defender or a wing-back or whatever. I'll tell you what, we'll deal with that in tomorrow's video because this is really about Memphis Depay, because in the interview that he gave with Graham Hunter, he alluded to having to push back against the board. Graham Hunter actually interrupted him and said, West Ham, you have to manage upwards. Basically, you have to stop players being forced upon you. So that I found very interesting from that part of the interview. And then what happens is you've got to piece the jigsaw together here. Then yesterday he was asked in the press conference if West Ham had made a bid for Memphis Depay. Basically, a London club had bid for Memphis Depay, and his language in that was very, very interesting. He said, "Well, it can't be us. If it was us, I certainly don't know about it." Again, the words are quite telling. The words are quite telling. You wouldn't say that if you hadn't bought something. If someone asked if you were gonna, have you made a bid for that? Have you bought for that? You just say no. Okay. But the whole thing was if we have, it's nothing to do with me. I don't know about it. Also, then there was a sort of what now appears to be quite a barbed remark about, well, maybe things like that happen at other clubs because they might have sporting directors, they might have owners that buy players, indicating at West Ham we do it somewhat differently. And what you've got going on is a war of words, there's messaging. This is basically, David Moyes knows that the board are going to hear his comments because the latest news today, the latest story coming out, is that West Ham have bid for Memphis Depay. But apparently it's the board that have bid for Memphis Depay. Now, we're here again. We're here again. Just if you would for a second put aside whether you think that Memphis Depay is a good player and would produce the goods for West Ham. Memphis Depay is a really, really skillful player. Excellent. You don't play for Manchester United and Barcelona if you're crap, really, do you? Actually, maybe I'd be interested in the examples, but by and large, they recruit good players. But you just put that to one side for a second and just let's deal with it from the aspects of the board overruling the manager. Now, I think in many respects, I would get why the board would try and do this. Because the board are probably as worried as we are that we don't have a big enough squad. However, I am going to reference you to a few comments that David Moyes also made in that Graham Hunter interview about why it's really important that he buys the players. He actually says it. He says, rather than have somebody just to fill a squad gap, I'd rather not have anybody. Those are his words. So the reports are today that And there's some really decent journalists leading with this. Some journalists who are, very much in the know. And they've indicated that we have bid for Depay. That the bid has come from the owners. I mean, I guess largely David Sullivan. And that David Moyes and Rob Newman have pushed back and said, no, we don't want him. This is not the first time that this has happened. And it's a little bit worrying, a little bit concerning that it is still happening. And as I mentioned before, I do wonder if the board are looking at it and thinking, well, hold on a second, you can't get the targets in that you want. So Moyes actually said yesterday one of his targets doesn't want to come. Onana didn't want to come. In this interview, he actually said, in the Graham Hunter one, that maybe West Ham weren't ready to attract these players yet. Those are, again, his words. Maybe the club are not big enough, not alluring enough, that a player might think, I want to go to West Ham. He actually says maybe they want to look at us over the next couple of years and say, we're not sure about you, but we're trying to buy big names. He also, in that interview, says the board back him. And I think the board do back him. So did he want Scamacca? Yes, the board got him. Did he want a Gerd? Yes, the board went and got him. Cornet, another one. The board get plenty of players that David Moyes wants. But I do think every so often, David Sullivan likes to have a little punt, likes to have a little gamble. Did an interview with Barry Silkman on this channel a little while ago, and Silkman said that to me. And his very words were, he said maybe once every 15 to 20 transfers, David Sullivan might have a gamble. He might like to buy a player and see how it works out. Now, I think there's some managers you can do that with. I can't think of too many because Allardyce didn't like it either. But I think there's some that you can do it with and there's some that you can't. And, well, one of them that you certainly can't is David Moyes. So for David Moyes to push back so publicly on this, I think is quite telling. It's not a particularly healthy situation in terms of the dynamic between the board and the manager. And it's not a particularly healthy situation in terms of trying to recruit so late on in a transfer window. Excuse me, 2 weeks to go. I think the next week it better be incredibly busy. I think the next week is possibly more important than the final week, because next week is your last opportunity to do it where you're not under the massive constraints of time. You start getting into the last week, you're down to days, you're down to 5 days, 4 days. You start having to do deals that maybe you don't want to do. So we better bring a lot of players in next week, is all I'm saying. Onto the Memphis Depay thing itself, though. Why would David Moyes not want this player? Well, it comes down to the MOT test. And again, it's become a little bit of a cliche. I think I'm going to stop saying it, actually. But let's go back to old-fashioned team spirit, shall we? And I remember the end of last season, particularly the Man City game, but there were a few games when we were absolutely decimated and we pulled through. Maybe even look at the 2 second legs in the knockout stages in Europe, where again we pulled through. Sevilla, Olympique Lyonnais. And everyone was talking about the team spirit, how close everybody is. Everyone was saying we were knackered before. Where do the players get this energy from? And then we start looking a bit at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and we realise, in fact, I think I even entitled a video, A Band of Brothers. We realise what a big, great band of brothers we've got. So what David Moyes likes is a really good team spirit, a really good bunch of lads, as he likes to call it, and they've all got to get on. And in many respects, that's more important to him. I've heard him talk about it in other interviews: attitude, commitment, application, character, personality. And it almost doesn't matter how skillful you are. If you don't have those attributes, you're not going to mix with a group. And in David Moyes' mind, you're going to sort of undermine it. There'll be less team spirit. And that's what he wants almost above anything and everything. Because when David Moyes is trying to impart his tactical plan for the game or whatever the case may be, he wants everybody to listen. He wants everybody pulling in the same direction, to use another cliche. So what's wrong with Memphis Depay? Well, playing-wise, there's nothing wrong with him at all. But I did something rare. I did a bit of research before doing this video. And I thought I'd have a little look about Memphis Depay, because I had it in my mind. Memphis Depay has been involved in some trouble, some misdemeanors, some different things, and he has. But I think one of the main things that I picked up on when looking at Depay was Depay wrote a book, an autobiography. It's called The Heart of a Lion. It's really, really interesting, because in that he talks about not being able to gel with teammates, not how he finds it difficult to get along with teammates. He's actually had fights on several occasions with his teammates. And actually, not just his teammates, when you would go away and you generally, when the clubs they book into a hotel, 2 players share a room. He actually goes on to say, I was constantly attacked by my roommates. The club tried to move it around and change who I was roomed with. He said mostly it involved fights with fists, but I was also threatened with a knife a number of times. And another time a boy clamped a pair of pliers on my ears and started pulling hard. I was constantly on my guard. It was then, some nasty stuff, some racist stuff was said to him, which I don't particularly want to say the words on this video, as I'm sure you'll understand. He goes on to say that his life is numb. He had a real bad trouble at school. I think a lot of this trouble was with his school teams, by the way. But he also has had falling outs with his teammates than being a professional footballer. And he goes on to say, basically, the only time that I could feel free is I blew out all my pain on the football field. It was a distraction for me. It's my liberation. It's the way to get away from life. I understand that. Look, he's overcome difficulty. That's probably why he is the player he is. He was driven. He was basically... things didn't work out with his parents. He was brought up by his grandfather. I think the general feeling is that basically he struggles to get along with people. And he has a lot of falling outs. I think, reading between the lines, I think he probably was picked on when he was younger. Anyway, that being said, as sad a story as that is, David Moyes probably taking one look at that and thinking, I don't want that. I don't want to put someone that can't room with another person. I don't want someone that has a history of falling out with his teammates. It's just not what I'm doing here. So regardless of how many free kicks he can score, how many tricks he can do, how many goals he scores, and how skillful he is, I don't want him at my club. At that point, I think it's conversation over. I really do think that. So the board have obviously gone to Moyes, because now we've got a public war of words with it. The board have obviously come to Moyes, and the board have said, oh, we can get this guy, Memphis Depay. David Moyes said no. Well, apparently we've still bid. And according to some people who know about such things, Jacob Steinberg, very well-respected journalist, clearly got the ear of David Sullivan. But he's saying the board have still bid. I think that's it anyway. That's the information I've got. A lot of people running with this. A big article in the Daily Mail today as well. So, yeah, really, really interesting and a little bit disconcerting, actually. Read all the comments yesterday, because obviously yesterday I featured Memphis Depay in yesterday's video, and it was a lot of people saying, "Oh, we'll never get him. It's a pipe dream." But apparently he's available. Lots of people are available from Barcelona for reasons that I tapped into yesterday. But yeah, this is not what I particularly want to hear. It's really not. It should be conversation over. I thought we'd done with all this. I thought the manager had full control, and has he not learned? Has Sullivan not learned? You and I both know. It might only be just one person watching this video. You and I both know that if that player is signed and he is forced upon David Moyes, that David Moyes will not use him. That guy will play on the bench. Sorry, won't even play on the bench. He'll sit on the bench, not play him. You know it, and I know it. What I think is most disturbing is that David Sullivan or whoever is trying to push this deal through thinks something different. I don't know what's going through his mind that he would think, oh, if I buy this player, that'll really work out and that'll work out as a transfer. It won't. You have no evidence to suggest that at all. At all. David Moyes is stubborn. Very, very stubborn. And if he doesn't think... Look, Felipe Anderson was a really good player. All right, it didn't work out. All right. Sebastian Haller was a really good player. But David Moyes didn't think they were suitable to be in the group. So he got rid of them, even at a massive loss. So if he can do that, I tell you now, he would bench Depay. He really would. And at that point, I do wonder if Sullivan will be looking around thinking, hold on, how's this happened? Why is he not playing this skillful player? Well, I'll tell you why, mate, because you bought him. It's not David Moyes' choice. Look, David Moyes said in these interviews, managers live or die by their recruitment. You've got to let him get on with it. I mean, he believes that. He really does. So let him get on with it. Let him do it. Stop forcing these players upon him. I do worry. Personally, I'm worried that he's running out of targets. I think David Moyes on some positions has been through his top 1, 2, 3, 4 targets first. First one's turned us down. Second one's turned us down. I think quite possibly been turned down by his 3 top midfield targets, which can't be easy and must be a bit of a worry. And I get it. I do understand. We're all a bit worried about that. David Moyes is probably a little bit worried about it. He wasn't impressed. Wasn't a great tone of voice he had when he said the boy didn't want to join us. Happens quite a lot, doesn't it? But it's not exclusive to West Ham, by the way. Let's just get that right. There's Man United haven't been able to sign players. Man City thought they had Cucurella tied up. He didn't end up going. He went to Chelsea. Crikey, even last season, Man City thought they had a deal for Ronaldo. He turned up, he turned it down, he went to Man United. It does happen to a lot of clubs. I mean, crikey, Crystal Palace thought they had Flynn Downs, he signed for us. Newcastle came in late for a Gerd, he signed for us. So it's not like PSG, Scamacca. There's examples of of players turning clubs down, it happens. I think in central midfield, it's been a bit of a awkward one really for David Moyes. But there you go. But even if that is the case, Memphis Depay is not the answer. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below.